Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're looking at a really specific theological story. It's about the origin of Lucifer, the archangel, and his rebellion way back, in the heavenly courts. So our goal isn't just a quick overview. We want to really dive into the details, the specifics from our source material. We're talking about how heaven was set up before the fall, the descriptions of status, the actual words of the divine decree, and the arguments used on both sides. Basically, we want to understand that exact moment when, well, everything changed, when order became chaos.
Yeah, and what this narrative gives us is it's almost like a blueprint for that celestial hierarchy.
Yeah.
It makes it really clear that the conflict wasn't some vague slide into evil. No, it was a very calculated response driven by ego, really reacting to a change in status and authority that was mandated from the top. The whole story really hinges on this difference between being the greatest created being and being, well, an uncreated divinity.
Okay, right. Let's unpack that. Starting at the beginning, before any hint of trouble. Lucifer wasn't some minor figure. The source describes him as this glorious archangel, full of honor, majesty. I mean, we're talking top tier.
Absolutely. Top tier, the source puts him right there, physically next to Christ, the beloved Son of God.
Yeah.
And his description, it's meant to show this status, right? Perfect appearance, noble, kingly. And it specifically mentions his broad forehead showing great intelligence. He's the peak of heavenly beauty, but also intellect.
Yeah, the radiance description is incredible, more beautiful than all the other angels, surrounded by bright light. Highly exalted, always near the Creator. It's difficult to picture a higher spot for someone who was created.
And that's the core tension, isn't it? We need to grasp that right away.
Sure.
Lucifer's status was huge, earned through his own glory, you could say. But Christ's status, that was foundational, inherent. The source really stresses this. Christ, the Son, was above all heavenly hosts. Why? Because he was one with the Father. He existed before any angels were created.
Ah, okay. So Lucifer is the greatest angel, but Christ isn't an angel. He's pre-existent divinity. Got it. And yet, for a while, this hierarchy worked. It was stable.
Exactly. It seemed to function perfectly fine. Angels gladly followed Lucifer's commands. The source paints a picture of peace, harmony.
Which raises the question then, if it was all so perfect, why the big event? What does the source say needed to happen to, well, break everything?
That's the million-dollar question, really. The system was stable because everyone knew their place, their role. The chaos gets triggered because the Creator decides to formally honor the Son. And this act fundamentally changes the relationship, the whole structure up there.
Right, this is the catalyst moment the narrative points to. The Creator calls everyone together, all the heavenly hosts. It's a formal gathering specifically to acknowledge Christ's position.
And for Lucifer, this is where his internal world just collapses. The Father makes an announcement, a decree, that Christ was now decreed to be equal with him. That's a massive statement. And the language used leaves zero room for doubt. The key phrase is something like, wherever the Son was, it would be as though the Father himself was there. The Son's word. Now it's got to be obeyed just like the Father's word. Total authority shared.
Wow, so that wasn't just confirming something that already existed implicitly, it was formalizing it, making it explicit, requiring the entire angelic host to see Christ's command as, well, the Creator's command, synonymous.
Precisely. And the source connects this directly to what's coming next, the future of the cosmos. All power to command the heavenly host is given to the Son. Specifically, it mentions for the work of creating the earth and every living thing on it. He's the one carrying out the Father's will in this huge project, though, importantly, never acting independently of the Father.
Okay, that seems almost logical, right? Setting up the command structure for a massive task, but Lucifer didn't see it that way. He saw it as, what? A demotion, a slight.
He saw it as taking away his own honor. And this is where you see that devastating split between what he did outwardly and what was going on inside. Outwardly, he did the right thing. He bowed before Jesus, acknowledged the supreme authority, the power from the decree.
Okay.
But inside, the source is very clear. His heart was filled with envy, with hatred. He resented Christ. This really shows the rebellion wasn't about principle for him. It was a character flaw, an inability to accept sharing the spotlight, essentially.
And it wasn't just about raw power, was it? It was tied to knowledge access.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
His specific complaints, his grievances were about information control, too. He was furious that Christ was taken into these special counsels of God, but he wasn't allowed to know God's secret plans. That resentment focused on Christ having this unique honor, sharing the Father's throne, the power, being declared equal with God himself. He wasn't in that innermost circle.
It's almost like, well, it's easy to just call it ego, cosmic ego, but the source frames it more like jealousy over being left out of the loop. Like the top VP being mad he wasn't in the boardroom when the company's future was decided.
That's a great analogy. It captures that feeling of exclusion. And Lucifer's resentment, it was definitely fed by self-admiration. He looked at his own bright clothes, his own super high status, standing right near the Creator. And instead of appreciating the immense glory he already had, his thoughts turned inward. He started demanding, justification. He's thinking, why? Why should Christ be honored above me? That self-focus, that self-worship became the poison.
And the moment that bitterness really took hold, that's when the planning started, the organized descent.
Yes, he turns away from God, full of jealousy and bitterness towards Christ, and starts kind of secretly recruiting other angels.
How did he do that? What was his strategy?
Very clever, actually. He masked his real intentions. He approached them with this air of seeming sadness. He didn't just march up and say, hey, let's rebel. No, no. He played on their fears. Fears about liberty, about authority.
Right. He took the decree, which was about establishing divine order, really, and he twisted it. He told the other angels their freedom, their liberty was now gone.
Exactly. That was his main weapon, rhetorically speaking.
Yeah.
The fear of perpetual submission. He puts this question to them, and it's quite manipulative. If we aren't given authority to, who will we be forced to obey forever? Do we have to bow down to someone else? See how he equates obeying Christ with, like, eternal slavery, loss of autonomy. That's how he stirred up dissatisfaction.
And that escalated pretty quickly into an open challenge.
Oh, yeah. He made it clear.
Yeah.
He would no longer submit to Christ. He wouldn't give him the honor God decreed he deserved. Instead, he would be the leader for anyone who followed him. And this kicks off what the source calls a great controversy among the angels.
A great controversy. That sounds like more than just an argument.
It signifies a huge conflict, a war of ideas, loyalties, dividing heaven itself. And initially, this war was fought with words, with persuasion, arguments about justice, and who had the right to rule.
Which is where the loyal angels come in. They didn't just sit back.
No, they actively tried to stop it. They tried to persuade Lucifer and his followers, using reason, using theology.
What were their main arguments? How did they try to counter him?
They used a few approaches. First, they appealed to morality, basically. They tried to persuade him to just accept God's will. They explained that honoring Christ was the right thing to do, the just thing, that accepting it was, the proper response to God's wisdom.
And did they address the hierarchy issue directly?
Yes, that was the second part. They hit him with the facts, the chronology. They reminded him, look, Christ is the true Son of God. He existed with the Father before any of us angels were even created. He's always been at God's right hand. This reinforces that Christ's authority wasn't some sudden promotion. It was ancient, inherent.
So it wasn't arbitrary.
Exactly. And third, and this is crucial, they appealed to his own self-interest, in a way. They pointed out the simple truth. Christ being exalted. It doesn't actually take away any honor you already have, Lucifer. Your glory, your beauty, your high rank, it's all still there. They were basically saying, you still have everything you earned. You're only losing something you were never actually entitled to.
That's a really interesting contrast. Lucifer focuses on fear, potential loss of some future power he thinks he deserves, while the loyal angels focus on the present reality, the shared history, the facts on the ground. Why didn't that logic work? Why did fear win out?
Well, the problem was, Lucifer wasn't really interested in logic anymore. He was interested in being number one, supreme status. The loyal angels, they made one last try, more emotional this time. They reminded him how everything used to be, perfect peace, harmony. They asked essentially, why wreck it? Why bring in division, arguments, rebellion now? But once that envy, that internal corruption had taken root, well, peace and harmony just weren't strong enough arguments against his drive for exclusive honor.
So let's wrap this deep dive up then. The core takeaway from this narrative seems to be that the conflict wasn't really about, say, God making a mistake or being unfair. It was rooted deep inside Lucifer. An internal struggle over his perceived status, his access to those secret plans, and valuing his own self-admiration more than accepting God's decree and shared authority.
That's it, exactly. The central tension is laid out so clearly. The Creator sets up this unified order. Christ is declared equal, based on inherent divinity. And Lucifer sees this structure not as divine order, but as a personal attack, an assault on his liberty, his earned honor, refusing to acknowledge Christ's preeminence. That was the critical, fatal choice he made.
And it really shows something profound in the source about, well, the difference between just acknowledging authority and truly submitting to it, doesn't it? The source makes it so clear. Lucifer went through the motions, he bowed, outwardly he complied, but inside, total rejection, bitter resentment. It was all there right from the start of the decree. So we'll leave you, the listener, with this final thought to maybe chew on. The conflict didn't start with Lucifer shaking his fist at the Creator himself. It started with something more specific, refusing to acknowledge Christ's divinely ordered equality, even while he was, physically bowing. What
Sure.
does that tell us about what true acceptance really means, and maybe how easily that outward performance of compliance can hide a foundation of internal rebellion? Definitely something to think about as you explore these kinds of narrative details further.